Well, welcome to my Thursday at 3, and today I have a very special guest. I know he's special, Claud Smith, who is our Director of Worship at First United Methodist Church. Claud, I'm so glad that you are with me today, but more than that, really glad that you're with us on the staff team. You have been a tremendous blessing to us over a number of years. You've been helping us, but now you have a new title and a capacity on staff, which is Director of Worship. What does that mean? What does that involve?
Yes, sir. I was brought in to help to oversee all aspects of worship, from the planning, the creative elements, to see how well things can flow in the service order, to the actual services where I tend to stage manage and be sure that everybody's where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there, so that for the congregation, the service just flows very smoothly.
Right. And there's a lot of aspects to that, right? I mean, I think, we don't always realize just the technical side of that and the preparation side of that, down to what's in the announcements, to the paper, to how we usher and seat people, to the flow from transition to transition, to trying to manage the pastors who get out of line frequently. Just all that is involved in being a director of worship. Just a simple job, right?
Absolutely.
Just a simple job. Well, I just have really enjoyed working with you, and people don't know that, you and I have been in conversations for a number of years about sermon themes or ideas that we might do to go with the look of the series. And so I'm just really grateful. So, Director of Worship, we have some things going on in the sanctuary, and I wanted to talk about that today, some of the renovation that is happening there, and was hoping you could kind of walk us through some of that. So why don't you start with what are we seeking to do? What's the overall purpose of some of that movement that's going on in the sanctuary? And then we'll get into some of the pieces.
Sure. Our overall goal is to improve the worship experience. And by that specifically, we want the sound to be improved for the choir so that it becomes a better experience for the worshiper, as well as I don't think there's been a lot of attention paid to the chancel area in past years. So we're able to kind of fix some of the dings and scrapes and scratches and get that really looking pretty again.
Right. The sanctuary is so long, you can sit in the back. When you get up close, you can see the wood is really rather worn. Yes. And really had a lot of nicks and scrapes as we've tried to move it around at different times through the years. And so I'm grateful for that. It strikes me that a lot of worship planning and preparation is about eliminating distractions. If I can't hear, or I can't see, or it looks untidy, or it keeps me from focusing on the presence of God, which I think is really what we're trying to do. If there's really hinky the way it kind of moves from one piece to another, it's a distraction. It keeps me from it. So I appreciate your goal of trying to help us come in and really focus down without trying to get in the way of that. And so I appreciate that goal. So there's a lot of pieces to that. And let's just go ahead and start with some of the wood pieces that are involved in that.
Okay.
And then we can talk about some of the others. So tell us a little bit about what's here. These curtains, they're kind of unseemly. What's happening with all of that?
They're very temporary, as people may have seen if we've knocked them over during the services.
Yeah, that was something.
Yeah, but they're just they're placeholders really, and they try to dress it up a little bit to remind you that there are pieces that should be there that aren't right now. Those are the pieces we've taken out to work on. On the right-hand side of the screen, where the tall black piece is, we have the used to be 3-panel. It will come back as a 2-panel wooden wall divider there. And we felt like that making it 2 panels instead of 3 would help to open up the space as far as the view is concerned. And then the piece, the lower piece on the bottom that goes across in front of where the choir sits, that's known as a Modesty Rail. That will also be coming back, made of wood with 2 doors in it to give access to the choir loft.
Yeah, I think, as I look up into the chancellor, there's the throne of God, that looks a big throne chair, and the altar, and you have these 2 pieces of wood that help eliminate distraction again. Right behind the big tall vertical piece is the door. A lot of magic happens behind that during the service. We're transitioning people in and out, and people coming and going. We're handing pieces, and so that's to keep people from being distracted as we set up worship. And then the Modesty Rail, of course, makes sense that the choir is not distracting as they're moving forward and so on. So that's what those feet. So look very similar, but maybe a little wider open in terms of getting view of the throne chair. So looking at this, what is this?
This is one of the Modesty Rails that I was speaking about that will go in front of the choir. The one you're looking at in particular will go on the left-hand side as you look at the choir loft. There's another one that will mirror that goes on the right-hand side. And I'll give everybody a secret that I didn't know until I talked to one of the members of our church who's an architect who had done some study of the building. If you stand in the center, in the back of the sanctuary and look, the walls have all been designed to draw your eye down in levels and point you toward the altar, toward the cross.
Oh,
and so we've
that's
tried
why it's kind of stepped down like that.
And that's why we've tried to keep some of that in the redesign so that it didn't just totally go out the window. So the side wall panels will still have one drop down, and then these two railings will also drop down.
So this shot here is some of the work, I assume, that's going on with the wood.
Yes, all of the wood, we're reworking some pieces and adding some new wood. So everything had to be sanded down to the bare wood like it was in the last photo. And then they're right now this week applying the new stain to the wood to darken it so that it matches what currently exists, so that anybody who walks into the sanctuary who's never been there before won't be able to look at it and say, hey, what's going on? The wood doesn't match. It all should match and blend in.
Yeah. It sounds like it's really quite a process. It's not just something we just go and do. It sounds like a lot of thought has been put into keeping the original design, making sure everything matches. That this has been quite a rather large project, frankly, that's involved in this.
It has, and what a lot of congregants may not know is we had to go to specific people that were specifically skilled in different things. Woodworking to match the wood the way it currently exists, and also the staining as well. And then we had a different crew come in and do what I'm going to tell you about now. They used to have on this side of the choir loft built-in risers that were part of the flooring. And so in order to make the space a little more adaptable to other things we might want to do in the future, we've made the risers temporary and turned everything around so that the choir now faces the congregation. It's given us a lot more freedom, and barely at the top of this picture, you can see where the organ speakers are. That was our biggest challenge before, because the choir stood with their backs to the organ speakers, and when we mic'd the choir, we mic'd the organ. And so it was hard to get a balance. Now, with the choir turned around, we're just micing the choir, and it's much easier to balance.
Yeah, the sound has been an issue for us for a long time. It's, when you get that beautiful building that's long and stately like that, it creates sound challenges. And, we've had folks that have shared they can't hear at certain spots, that the beams going up and the pillars out in the sanctuary are difficult as well. And then, we struggled with, like you said, how does the choir hear themselves? How do they hear the instruments? How does that all fit together? And so part of this, I appreciate you mentioning, is about trying to correct that sound issue for us, which has been years in the making, and multiple companies that have helped us with that. And so I'm really excited about that. The other part is it feels like it gives us greater flexibility. I think of the festival that was so wonderful we just had, we have every year. There's people all over the place. You can't even move. And so this allows greater flexibility for people to see when we have large choirs and worship events like that as well. So
yes, it does.
That's wonderful. Yes, well, great. So that is quite an undertaking. When do they hope to have all this done?
Our goal is to have all of the wood that's now been completed and sanded, stained, and reinstalled by January the 2nd.
Right.
So that we
right. Okay, great. January 2nd, of course, is our Wesley Covenant service. It's the time of year that as Methodists we use to kind of renew our commitment. Make me what you will, says Wesley. It's this kind of prayer that we will be used by God in the coming year, and it's going to be a multi-intergenerational service. with kids and youth and so forth. And so we'll want to be there for the second, and it'll be great to see the new sanctuary and a reason to come back.
Exactly.
Now, obviously, this doesn't come free. I'm assuming all this work, multiple weeks and sanding and moving things. And so I just want to mention, of course, that this comes from a gift, a grant from the Marcy Trust. The Marcy Trust, just as a reminder, was an endowment that was set up by the Marcy family, who were active members of our church years ago, before they passed on to the great race, in the sky. But they were members of the church and were very invested in the church, and were the folks that actually gave us the property that we park on across the street by the lake. But they set up this endowment, and it is not our endowment. It is actually an independent endowment fund, and but its primary recipient by its bylaws is our church, and we receive money from them for special projects or startup ministries. And all that is to say that this project in the sanctuary is being paid for by a grant through the Marcy Trust that is not impacting our offering plate or impacting our general budget. And so you've heard me talk about, we're really minding our pennies right now in this COVID season. We can do this because this is not a part of our funding or how we raise money. This is independent of that. And one of the projects Marcy has done, it helps us tremendously and will help us worship, but just want to explain that. Other piece I want to mention, we have a new sermon series coming up starting on January 9th, Renovate, building our future together. And looking forward to digging into the book of Nehemiah. And I'm looking forward even more to seeing what creativity you'll bring to the table, Claud, as you help us dig into that story and building together as a church towards the future.
We're excited in the same way that we feel that the Bible is a blueprint for our lives. We'll be using visuals that deal with blueprints and things like that to help with the renovation. And it's great that we have the chancel renovation completed by the time we start the sermon series. So,
that's great. Yeah, it really goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Good reason to come back and be in person.
Oh, yes.
See all that together. So just so we get to know you a little more, what do you do for fun in your free time? I don't think you have a lot of free time, but in your free time, what do you do for fun?
I like to go to the movies.
Fantastic. And your favorite genre of movie is not Disney, I'm assuming.
Well, I've worked for the Disney company at one time. So yes, I've seen a lot of Disney movies. And I also used to work for Busch Gardens for their Halloween stuff.
How about that?
I got to watching a lot of scary movies and intense movies that are a little darker. And so that's kind of what I go for. It's also a release for me. If I can scream and all that kind of stuff, it gets the tension out. So
that's great. Well, that's good to know. I'm kind of hope there's no crossover there to worship.
No.
Come to worship at Busch Gardens. All right. So, Claude, I appreciate you and appreciate your work and just being in ministry together. And thank you for the work on the sanctuary renovation.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I really do.
All right. Well, we'll see everybody on Sunday, and God bless.
Bye-bye.